Hamid from Funmakers.
I'm Johan and I work for Midnight Hub.
Hey, so I'm Jack from Oddbug Studio.
Hello everyone, I'm Nils from Bedtime Digital Games, and our game Figment is out today. And it's an action adventure game which is also a musical.
But I know I will see you again.
I know at first glance it looks like maybe even a bit of a kid's game, but underneath it all you are trying to tackle some very delicate topics.
Right.
So how did you go about trying to tackle these topics? Why did you want this to be around those topics?
Yeah, the game definitely deals with some deeper emotional things, and it's definitely also a personal thing. Like a lot of the things that we deal with are things that we can also kind of relate to as the people on the team, not one specific guy, but we took in the personal kind of influences from everyone and tried to kind of put that in, because the game deals with the mind of a person, and this mind is kind of maybe a collected mind of the people who are involved in creating the game. So yeah, definitely something that came from us and is personal.
And we're here presenting our first game, Ridden.
Can change the laws of nature.
The first thing that I noticed about your game was how strikingly beautiful it is, which obviously is very important when you're making a walkthrough simulator, because it's all about the atmosphere that the player is thrust into when they're playing the game. It has been kind of related to games like Firewatch and Gone Home. How would you say that your game stands out in a sense?
I don't really like to call it walking simulator. I like to call it a slower adventure game. And we have a lot more puzzles than what you usually have in these sort of games, and challenges the player a little bit more. And the story that we're trying to tell is a mystery story as well, where we have all of these clues that the player can try to fit together for themselves before they actually reach the end. So it's not just following the normal visual story that you usually see in this sort of walking simulator. It's more of a finding a lot of different clues and solving puzzles and progressing in that way.
And we've just released The Lost Bear. We've been working on it for 6 months. It's a 2D VR platform that's exclusive to PSVR. But basically imagine it as a virtual puppet theatre in which you watch the game play out on a 2D stage, but around you is a world similar to that you're playing in, that changes as you progress through it. The story follows Walnut, who is a little girl. She loses her teddy bear, and it's the adventure of her gaining her courage to save her little teddy bear and return home to her brother.
Yeah, that was a really good way of explaining it, by the way, because
I've done it a lot.
I've tried to talk to my friends about this game and they're like, what do you mean? It's 2D platformer, but it's in VR. And I'm like, yeah, but...
Jumanji is an example of when you're playing a game, but that world comes out around you. That's kind of what... But there's no Robin Williams, so it's not as good.
Well, this is taking a turn.
We're showcasing Silent Streets, a mobile detective adventure game with augmented reality features. The first episode has been out for 3 months now in App Store and Google Play, and we're here to present episode 2 of the game with the Apple Arcade features.
Augmented reality is very new in the gaming world.
Right.
I mean, I haven't seen as many people playing around with what you can do in augmented space as much as virtual reality, for instance.
Right.
So, what kind of inspired you to make an augmented reality game?
It was a game for Nokia smartphones. Don't remember exactly the name of it. Released, say, 8 years ago, 9 years ago. And my colleague Alex played that back in the time, and it was a geolocation adventure game with audio. Now that inspired the detective adventure game with augmented reality features, and we wanted walking to be a big part of that. And then the actual camera thing came in later, because we realized some existing augmented reality games were using that. That's it. And the reason why there are not so many games, I guess, is augmented reality obviously limits the settings and the themes that can be used in a game.
It's quite interesting because a lot of games, when they try and show topics like these, will be very serious, maybe a bit more on the darker side, but you've chosen to go very innocent, very kind of playful and uplifting. Why did you choose to develop a game like this?
Yeah, like I think that's like part of who we are. Also, like we like telling jokes and we like doing all these things and we like drawing colorful drawings and all these kind of things and doing crazy music. So it's kind of natural to kind of go about it that way. But I don't necessarily see that there's a problem that like people can be like both fun and serious at the same time, you know. And social games, I think maybe it's a little easier actually to get these things across when you kind of choose something a little lighthearted.
Yes, I found that as well because it's quite a dark game. So it can be quite difficult to see what's around, and then when you realise, oh, that's a light right there, and then the whole place gets illuminated. And even just the small things, like you had a cluster of candles, and you just do one, and it didn't really make much difference with the lights, but as you were lighting them more, you could see everything around you. And then I noticed that there was a little wooden sword, which I liked a lot. Oh, it's a sword! I feel like a badass now. But yeah, so I think the atmosphere works very nicely. But one thing that I was wondering, on your website it says that it's a simulation horror game. Would you say that this was horror, or maybe a different version or different take on horror?
So it was more horror before. We found it to be difficult to tell like an intricate story inside a horror game because everyone was going around like waiting for things to jump out at them.
Yes.
So instead we changed out the horror game mechanics toward even more like adventuring and puzzle solving and just to go around and finding clues. But the plot is still the same. It's still like the same feeling. This really creepy, ominous things going to happen, and there is of course still an antagonist in the game. But we don't have any violence. We don't have any gore or anything like that. But the mystery that the player will unravel is very, very dark in itself as well. So it's both. It's a horror themed adventure game.
Gotcha. It's a 2D side-scrolling platformer game. How did this idea arise? It's so unique, it's so different. Were you thinking of originally just making a side-scrolling platformer, or?
So both our artists are obviously really talented 2D artists, but the thing is, Playdead are already rocking cinematic platformers. Like Limbo and Insight are 10 out of 10 games, so we didn't really want to compete with them. So we thought if we put it into VR, it creates a unique experience different to the first-person shooters or the touchy-feely picking stuff up VR games.
Yeah.
We wanted to create a more chilled, relaxed experience that you could become immersed in that world. And the 2D platform with Lost Bear really allowed us to do that. And also, because our lead artist, Martin, is from the Czech Republic, we've kind of got that heritage of like Eastern European puppet shows. So that kind of all led into the concept that is Lost Bear now.
Do you think that making a game using AR has actually enhanced anything narratively throughout the gameplay process? Because I know that the narrative is quite a massive, pivotal aspect of this game.
As it is used in the first episode, as it has been out, I think augmented reality was more of a gimmick. But with the Apple AR kit, it's a much bigger thing because you can do the proper investigation. So you can set up a room around you, or maybe a murder scene in the street, or a morgue scene, and actually, walk around the body and collect clues, or open drawers and cabinets and look inside and stuff like that. So that's way more meaningful, I would say, for a detective adventure game.
I mean, the music is a massive part of the game. Every review that I have seen has talked about how unique it is, how every boss has their own song, but also throughout the game, just hitting random objects, you can kind of add to the music around, which is really great. So why do you think the music was so pivotal? What do you think it brings to the game?
Well, at least from the beginning of the game, we wanted something that was kind of like we wanted this painting that you can explore, and then at one point it's like we need to add something more to this. So it's like we just figured it'd be cool to try out like what about if the characters sing to each other? Like I really hate musicals, but it's like it could be really fun to try to like make one. So it's just like let's try that, and we tried it. And I voice acted. I did the music, right? So I voice acted one of the guys and tried. like this kind of guy, and it's just like, that's pretty fun. Let's try and go for it.
From my fever dream, your blood is boiling, your headache split, you lose your lunch and smell like something nasty.
And then from there, it like took like the idea of like the whole world should kind of play along and sing along to you as you play. So like you walk past an object and it will like have its own melody that plays along with the background music.
What's supernatural about this game? Because when I first saw a trailer of it, I just thought it was going to be, you know, someone lost in the woods. But then I read supernatural. I was like, oh, there's a bit more to this game than I realized.
Yeah, so there is magic in this game. There is like forces of nature, and we do have at least one character that's a ghost. And I guess the people will get to see what other sort of magical things they will encounter. The game is not only about magic though. There's also a lot of mechanical puzzles, as you saw as well when you were playing the game.
Yeah. So when making a virtual reality game, obviously there's a lot more to think about in that sense, where you want them to look, and you know, you don't want them to miss things, and also because it is a platformer and you need to be, you know, jumping and making sure you're not dying, I guess it's easy to get distracted when you're in a virtual reality environment. So were there any difficulties that you stumbled across?
Yeah, making this game was really hard. The thing is, when you normally make a game, you kind of, like making a film or music, you reference other people.
Yeah.
You look at what they're making and you say, oh, like this bit, like that bit, maybe we could do something like this. But because it was a new experience, there is no other sort of 2D platformer in VR. We had to do a whole load of prototyping. I'd say out of 100 ideas, maybe 4 of them get through, because you don't know what's going to work. You have to constantly test it. You have to constantly put it to people and see what they think, because there is nothing to reference, like I say. So it did take a lot of hard work and a lot of man hours to get it done. And another thing was like trying to sync that 2D and 3D. We didn't want it to be like this is just a 3D space and this is just a 2D space. We wanted that to blend, and we wanted it to feel like you're actually a part of that world. So we had to do a lot of stuff to try and get that to work.
So when you think of AR, I know it's still very fresh and a lot of people are still experimenting with it, but where would you personally like to see it heading in the future?
I'm pretty sure people will play a lot with the portals. Like if you go online, there will be a lot of demos for ARKit with portals where you can walk through the portal and virtually find yourself in a virtual world. And then you look around and then you turn back and you see the portal staying there and people in the streets still passing there. You know?
Oh my God!
So you can get inside the portal and out of it, and in a fully interactive way. So basically that means...
Is that currently in development, or...?
No, I mean, yeah, the Apple ARKit allows for that easy.
Wow.
So, I mean, that means, for example, you can put a portal in front of you on a sidewalk and then walk into the portal and find yourself on the same street, for example, with, you know, knights going here and there and, you know, a medieval town around you.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be that cool? And
Oh my
maybe
God.
it can also use the geolocation to understand that you're maybe in London or in Birmingham, and then it will kind of understand what kind of surroundings to show you.
That's amazing, because I mean that could be like Elizabeth Tear in Bioshock. And a question I want to ask everyone today is, I'm studying games development, so very much still a student. If you could give one piece of advice to a student or someone trying to get into the games industry, what piece of advice would you give?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. Like, obviously play a lot of games, but also just like start yourself. Like that's the way I've been about. Like, if you want to do games, then do games. You don't need like a degree, or you don't need to like know certain people or anything. I think you just start in your basement or whatever, and just start programming, start drawing, start like have ideas, make it yourself. I think that's the way to go about it. That's the only way you get good at it. It's like practice.
Just do it.
Yeah, have fun, DIY, you know.
I think it depends on which part of the gaming industry you want to be in. Programming?
So programming,
or,
yeah.
I don't know. That also depends on if you want to be an engine programmer or a game programmer. Yeah, because it's a little bit different. I just think that you should just like try making games. It's as simple
Just
as
do
that.
it.
Yeah, it's as simple as that. Like just try making different games
Yeah.
and see what challenges arose and how to overcome them.
From my point of view, it's work for yourself, be indie, make stuff for yourself. Don't make stuff to impress somebody else. Make something that you want to make, and then hopefully that will impress somebody else. That would be my advice.
Study basic product marketing, I guess, because I think that's the part that many even experienced developers just miss in their work, and it starts from the product, like, know who you're building for, what exactly the audience is, who's the reference customer, what games they play, where they hang out, because then it will give you a clear idea of those game design and the road to the market. What publishers are gonna approach with your game, which shows you will go to, which social media you will use, which press you will go to, etc., etc. Makes things so much easier.
Thank you very much.
You can find more information about the game on silent-streets.com. That's the website of the game. And the second episode will be out at the end of October.
Find more information about Lake Ridden if you go to lakeridden.com. You can follow us on Twitter at Midnight Hub.
Oddbug Studio has a website, has Twitter, it's all under Oddbug, so just look for that. Lost Bear is on PlayStation Store.
The game's out on Steam, where you can get it for Mac and PC and Linux right now, and it'll be out on consoles later this year, hopefully. And you can follow us on Twitter on Bedtime DG.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. No,
it's
awesome.
good.
Thank you. You're very professional. I liked it.
Oh, thanks.